For a while now I've been toying with the idea of making up a set of these. They're a very simple die block for making these mudguard stays. With the popularity of the smaller lightweights and autocycles, I thought it'd be a good idea to get to the point where I can make any stays that I need. So I started off with a bit of square block and set it up in the milling vise. These don't have to be super accurate, so I just used a vernier. You bring the cutter down between the jaws, turn the cutter so that it's at 90 degrees to the vise jaws, and use the vernier to measure the gap between each side. Get them as even as possible, and she's pretty central. I didn't dive in straight away to making the die. I thought first I'd do a few test cuts. The die block has to be machined quite deep, so these initial cuts were more to test the width of the cutters and make sure they're going to do the job that I want of them and that my calculations were correct. So I cut a slot to make sure it would be the right width to take the material. This was then swapped out for the two bullnose cutters that will actually create the rib in the stay. The bigger one to be pressed into, and the smaller one is for round stock to be placed into to actually do the punching side of things. Here you can see me just using the last cutter there. Here, this is the round stock die. It's just a preliminary check to make sure everything's going to go the way I want it to do. With all the milling cutters checked out and dimensions checked out, I started to machine the actual die block. I'm cutting a slot here. The top half of the tool is inset into the block so that it's self-aligning when you're actually doing the punching. So it has to be a bit deeper than normal, and the top half of the die has to fit this slot quite accurately. So again, I'm just taking a few of thou off each time and trying the top half of the die in it to fit. This was bottomed out the slot that the punch actually pushes the metal into. It's a radius cut with a bullnose cutter. The pin itself was just a bit of mild steel. In fact, the whole thing is mild steel. It's going to have a very light duty and won't be making hundreds of them. But the pin was turned to size to be a nice tight fit in the lower slot, so that I could just tap it into place and it would be held strong enough. With it in place, I filed off one edge. This is to give a lead to the actual stamping, rather than a hard corner. Here you can see me testing out the die with a bit of scrap. I then tried it on again a bit of scrap, but more dimensionally correct. I find that if you move the thing across about half an inch at a time, you don't get any rib marks between, you know, like creating joints in the rib that you're forming. It seems to smooth out a lot better if you just move it across in small increments. And there we are. The rib is punched onto the stay, and there's the transition from flat to rib. comparing the original with the new one, even though it is twice as long. And there we have it. Thanks for watching.